Five Nights at Freddy's, the horror franchise filled with creepy animatronics, has surprising origins. The game developer behind it, Scott Cawthon, is a devout Christian who started out making faith-based games. They were generally well received, but didn't perform well enough financially, so he stopped making religious games but continued to focus on computer and mobile games. In 2013, he put out the family-friendly Chipper & Sons Lumber Company, a resource management game starring an anthropomorphic beaver. But reviews unfavorably compared the characters to creepy animatronics, which eventually gave him the idea for Five Nights at Freddy's. I'm about to play the game for the first time. I've never played before, but I've always been intrigued by it, because there's an inherent creepiness to animatronics. Inanimate things puppeted by machinery to simulate life. But in their eyes, you see the truth, that they're closer to dead than living. It's the uncanny valley, ripe to be exploited for horror. Anyway, I've always struggled to find time for video games, but I want to watch the new movie, and it doesn't feel right to watch before even trying the game. Plus, I just got hired as the night guard for this old pizza shop / arcade, and I've got 6 hours to kill until my shift is over. So now's as good a time as any to give this game a shot. And after that, Freddy Fazbear will face his greatest foe yet. It's one machine against another. Animatronic killer versus algorithmic distiller. As in the ranking algorithm, which distills movies down to a precise score. It was hard to think of a rhyme that works there. My mission with this channel is simple. Rank every movie ever created, one at a time. I do this using a scientific approach. Every episode, I explain a movie. As I go, the ranking algorithm will react, gaining or losing points when the movie does something good or bad. At the end of the episode, we get a precise score, so the movie can be force ranked against every other movie ever made. Today, we'll be ranking Five Nights at Freddy's, but first, let's try out the original game from 2014. The basic premise is that you were just hired as the night security guard at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. You sit in the security room and monitor the cameras from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., but you're warned that the animatronics have been left in a free roaming mode, something about their servos locking up if they're left off for too long. Makes a lot of sense. The risk is that if they see you at night, they won't recognize you as human. They'll assume you're an endoskeleton without their costume on, so they'll stuff you into a Freddy Fazbear suit, full of crossbeams, wires, and animatronic equipment which would rip you to shreds.
So you can imagine how having your head forcibly pressed inside one of those could cause a bit of discomfort and death.
So the actual gameplay is you sitting in a security office, just looking at cameras. I can look at this camera and see the animatronics are all just standing there. I can look at this camera and see nothing. How about this camera? Nothing, nothing. In the security office itself, can I open drawers? No. Pick up objects and maybe find items or something? No. But I can look to the left and I can look to the right. Look to the left, look to the right, check the cameras. Nothing. There are a couple of things you can do. There are these lights you can turn on, one in the left hallway and one in the right hallway. I can also close the doors on either side of the office. The idea is that if one of the animatronics comes for you, you gotta make sure the door is closed on whichever side they're coming from, so you're protected. But I've been sitting for about 3 minutes, representing 2 in-game hours, and nothing's happening. I can just sit here and talk to you, and technically, I'm still playing. What kind of game is that? Wait a second, where'd the chicken go? Oh, getting fuzzy again. So they're moving some more. Where are they heading? Alright, there he is. Bunny, backstage on camera 5, and chicken's in the dining area. Nowhere near me. Looks like I'm still safe in the security office. Now, you never actually see them move. It either happens when you aren't looking, or the camera will go all fuzzy and then they're gone. Anyway, let's see where they're at now. Chicken is 2 rooms away in the East Hall. It's kind of creepy looking. And the bunny is right outside my office. I guess it's time to shut the door. Wait a minute, what's going on? What's going on? Why do the lights turn off? Why can't I do anything? All the buttons are gone. Okay, something's happening. Freddy's face in the doorway. What is this? I thought people said this game is scary. Nothing scary about this. The music is kind of creepy. It's a good use of the Toreador song. But come on, let's get on with it. Whoa! See, I knew that was coming, but I wasn't quite sure when. So, they got me. I'll admit, they got me. But it's not going to happen again. So here's what went wrong. You have a certain amount of power to get you through the night. That's the percentage next to power left in the bottom left corner. The usage bars underneath indicate how fast the power is draining. By default, you're using 1 bar of electricity. But if you're looking at the cameras, for instance, usage goes to 2 bars, and the power drains faster. If you close one of the doors or turn on one of the hallway lights, that adds more bars, making the power drain even faster. So you can't just leave the doors closed or look at the cameras all night. I'm starting to get it. It's a time management game, choosing when to look at the cameras, which ones to look at, only closing the doors when absolutely necessary. As you play, you end up in a game of chicken with yourself. You want to check the cameras, but at the same time, you don't want to use up too much power. So instead of checking, you tell yourself to wait as long as possible between glances. Alright, I think it's time to check the cameras. Or maybe I'll wait just 1 more second. Wait. Hold. Hold. Alright, let's check. Wait a minute, they can run? Oh! Okay, I'm starting to see the genius of the game. You'd think that jump scares get old, but they happen infrequently enough, and often while you're trying to avoid them, thinking you might. So when you fail, it's almost unexpected by definition, so they don't wear off. And every time you get a jolt, it's like getting hit with a stick, training you to fear losing even more. And that's on top of the automatic anxiety you get from a perfectly balanced time management game. The game also has a great creepy atmosphere tying it all together. And I think it was pretty brilliant to mostly prevent you from actually seeing the animatronics in motion. It's often scarier to let your mind fill in the blanks. Plus, seeing them move around too much would risk it coming off as silly. Anyway, I know there's a lot more to these games. I know the lore gets filled out a bunch by sequels and tie-ins. There's a lot of fan theories. But now that I at least have a flavor for it, let's check out the movie and see if it recreates the same creepy, anxious atmosphere. It starts with a desperate night guard at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, cowering behind a barricaded door in his office. Something tries to break in as he escapes through a vent. But it's no use. He's captured and stuffed into a costume, full of gears and machinery, not meant for fleshy humans. Cut to Mike. Since his mother's passing, life hasn't been easy for Mike. He works as a mall security guard while raising his sister, Abby. But things are about to get even tougher. Mike has lost many jobs before, and today he loses another after spotting a man grabbing a child, mistaking it for a kidnapping, and beating the boy's father. Well-intentioned, but nonetheless a fireable offense. So it's time for a meeting with career counselor Steve Raglan, who has work for him, another security job. Only problem is that it's a night shift, and taking care of Abby makes that impossible. But the notice of delinquency on his door reminds Mike just how desperately he needs a job. It's a good setup. Someone would have to be desperate to take a night shift at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, so this is all necessary groundwork. And Josh Hutcherson does a good job portraying the responsibility and exhaustion weighing on the character. The incident at the mall also piques curiosity, because there's clearly more going on there. It wasn't just a mistake that anyone could make. There's something in his character which made him react violently without a second thought. Of course, the movie wants to make sure we have an idea where this is all heading, so it uses the cold open, where that security guard gets killed. But it felt like a pretty generic way to start. So many horror movies start that exact way. Unnamed character gets killed by monster we don't quite see yet. And the thing is, it undercuts some of the creepiness you get from the build-up, where the animatronics seem normal at first. Then you notice they've changed locations, and the dread builds as they close in. Instead, it starts with them already on the verge of killing this guy. The guard is also bumping into things and yelping in a pretty cartoonish way. Anyway, let's see where the algorithm has things so far. Alright, not a bad start. Hopefully it just keeps climbing from here. Mike returns home and relieves the babysitter, Max. Then he finds Abby talking to her imaginary friend. That night, he takes a sleeping pill, plays some nature sounds, then falls asleep with a book called Dream Theory on his nightstand and a poster of Nebraska above him. He dreams of a family picnic years ago, when his mother told him to watch his brother Garrett, and his brother was kidnapped in front of him. The next day, Mike's bad luck continues when Aunt Jane threatens to take custody of Abby. So far, the characters have felt fairly grounded, but this scene feels like something out of a made-for-TV Disney movie, which kinda spoils the mood. The aunt is a cartoon villain. She calls her niece mentally ill for having imaginary friends and only wants custody so she can get a monthly check from the state. Without knowing all the details of how that works in real life, I'm sure this is an absurd oversimplification. And the whole time, the lawyer has this equally cartoonish deer in headlights look. Now, if this movie is going for silliness, then that score should come up as long as it racks up some genuine laughs. Until then, the silliness is just undercutting the potential for drama, suspense, and horror. Alright, let's get back. Did you just hear something? I better check the camera. I don't see any movement, nothing out of the ordinary. Maybe it was just my imagination. Anyway, back to the movie. After the tense meeting with his aunt, Mike starts to have some doubts. Maybe he shouldn't be the one raising Abby after all. But the girl's teacher reassures him. Pictures have tremendous power for children. Before we learn to speak, images are the most important tool we have for understanding the world around us. And who is at the center of most of the pictures Abby draws? Mike. But that might not be enough. If Mike doesn't get a job, any judge would side with his aunt over him. So he makes a call to Steve Raglan and takes the night job. Raglan gives him a little backstory. Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria was popular with kids in the 80s. It's been shut down for years, but the owner is a sentimental guy and wants to keep it standing. Plus, they've had problems with drunks and vagrants breaking in over the years, and that's where Mike comes in. His first night starts with an instructional welcome video. They do a great job recreating that 80s or 90s instructional video aesthetic. It's also cool how it gets all staticky when the animatronics come on screen, to keep them mysterious until the full reveal. And in general, the pizzeria has the right look. Visually, it's a pretty faithful adaptation, at least based on the first game, and it has the right nostalgic vibe. Mike opens a locker and is startled by a small balloon boy figurine staring back at him from inside the locker. It's pretty disappointing as far as jump scares go, especially considering the source material is so good at them. Usually it pulls them off with movement and loud noise. Here, there's no movement, and this doll isn't particularly frightening, so we're fully dependent on loud noise. And it just doesn't work. At least it didn't make me jump, and clearly the ranking algorithm was also unfazed. So it comes off as another cheap trick we've seen so many times before. Mike explores the pizzeria. He notices a bunch of children's drawings on the wall and hears something fall behind a nearby curtain. He checks it out and sees those infamous animatronics. Still as night. By 3 a.m., he's asleep at the desk, having the same dream he always does. But this time, he notices 5 other children who also witnessed the kidnapping. He asks if they saw who took his brother, but they just run away. He chases them, trips on a rock, and wakes up at 6 a.m. Time to go home and let the babysitter go. A babysitter who isn't what she seems. It turns out that Max and her brother Jeff were hired by Aunt Jane to spy on Mike and look for dirt that'll lose him custody of Abby. So far they haven't found anything, so Jeff suggests another idea. Trash Freddy's and get him fired for failing at his security job. That night, Mike brings his Nebraska poster and nature sounds to work for another round of sleeping on the job. And it's the same dream. He questions the children and gets nowhere. The movie doesn't have a lot of momentum at this point because it hasn't done much to pique our curiosity about the pizzeria, other than what we know going in and the cold open. Instead, it almost feels like it's running out the clock, just trying to pass the runtime. By default, dream sequences are boring. They usually don't progress the plot, and often they're just used to tell us what's on a character's mind without having to work for it. By this point, we've had 3 of them. You get the idea they'll be important later on, but so far, they're just not interesting enough. On top of that, we get another scene with cartoonishly evil aunt and deer in headlights lawyer. It's a subplot that's silly and hard to care about. It's obviously just there to set up some hapless victims who are bad enough that we don't care if they get hurt or killed. Okay, I definitely heard something that time. I'm gonna check the camera. Alright, he's still there. But did he move slightly? I'm probably just being paranoid. Alright, back to the movie. Mike is woken up by some loud music over the speaker, some flashing lights, and a certain visitor from Pirate Cove who goes unnoticed. Mike flips the breaker, then answers the buzzer to find a cop at his doorstep named Vanessa. She's here to check in on the place and notices Mike is bleeding, perhaps a wound from his dream. As she tends to it, Vanessa tells him how she loved Freddy's as a kid. She even introduces him to them by hitting a button labeled Showtime. The robot animals come out from behind the curtain and play a tune. "Want to dance?" she asks, before the animatronics malfunction and shut down. She also casually mentions some kids who went missing here in the 80s. After she leaves, Max, Jeff, and a couple of their buddies break in, which doesn't go well. One gets his face eaten by a cupcake, another is taken out by Bonnie the Bunny, Jeff gets it from Foxy, Max goes in to see what's going on and finds a kid running around. Following him leads her to Freddy himself, who bites her in half. That was a pretty shocking and unexpected moment, especially after most of the other deaths were off-screen or only implied. Though the jump scares continued to be disappointing. Max stares into Freddy's mouth, and then a child's hand. Wait a minute, that's not scary. Why didn't they just copy the game, where things are quiet and dark, then suddenly, bam, evil animatronic in your face? It works every time. They should have at least done it once or twice. I know you don't want to overuse jump scares, but they have their place in horror, and it's a huge part of the game. And as a whole, this sequence feels like a symptom of a bigger problem, a sort of identity crisis where this movie can't decide what it wants to be. It clearly isn't going for the same anxious and creepy dread from the game, but it's unclear what it wants to do instead. The opening sequence in this one feel like they're part of a goofy slasher movie about killer animatronics, but it isn't doing enough with that genre. We don't care about any of the victims to feel any tension, and aside from the one interesting kill, it isn't over the top or weird enough to be fun. There also just isn't much plot happening, and the protagonist Mike isn't really doing anything. We're already halfway through the movie, and he isn't even aware of the danger lurking at Freddy's, other than the vague mention of kids going missing here in the 80s. The only thing he's actively doing is trying to solve his brother's kidnapping in a dream, which hasn't been too exciting. And so far, the cop character Vanessa feels really weird. She's just as one-dimensional as everyone else, and she pretty much feels like she's just there for exposition, to tell us about missing kids and the place's history, and to kind of flirt with Mike out of nowhere. So there's no tension, not much fun, and stuff is just happening to or around Mike without him really doing anything. Back home, Vanessa pays Mike a visit to tell him that someone broke into Freddy's and trashed the place. Plus, she found his sleeping pills there, which is criminal negligence. "You wouldn't understand," Mike says, and she asks him to help her understand, so they go for a walk. It cuts to them sitting by the water, and then Mike starts to explain what's going on. Makes me wonder what they talked about on the walk over. I can picture her asking, "So what's up?" And he's like, "Shh, no, not yet. It's gotta be cinematic when I tell you. We gotta be sitting by the water. It's gonna be really dramatic." He tells her about his brother Garrett, who was kidnapped when he was 12, how he saw it happen but couldn't remember any details to help them find whoever did it. But he read a theory that even if we don't consciously remember something, the memories are still there. So every night, with the help of sleeping pills, familiar sights like a Nebraska poster, and familiar sounds like those nature sounds, he revisits the memory in his dreams, hoping to find some clues. She gets called away for work, but first tosses his pills in the water and tells him no more sleeping on the job. This whole scene feels pretty contrived, that he's so quickly willing to open up to her and she's so ready to listen. Vanessa essentially acts like a two-way exposition machine, there to tell us about Freddy's and there to give Mike a sounding board to tell us about himself. That night, the babysitter Max doesn't answer her phone. Mike is unaware that's because she's dead, so he has no choice but to bring Abby with him to work. And while he sleeps, the voice of a boy wakes Abby up, drawing her to the animatronics. Meanwhile, in Mike's dream, he speaks to a child and realizes he's one of the kids who disappeared in the 80s. Somehow his spirit has entered the dream. As always, Mike begs him to share what he knows about the man who took his brother. This time, the boy offers to answer, but first asks what Mike will give them in return. Anything, Mike promises. The boy disappears, but Mike notices he's drawn a rabbit on the ground. Then he's woken up by Abby screaming. He runs to her and finds they were only playful screams. Apparently, she's made some new friends: Freddy, Bonnie, Foxy, and Chica. Getting a good look at all four of them together in this scene, you can really appreciate the practical effects used to bring them to life. The animatronic characters look great, and that's thanks to the work from Jim Henson's Creature Shop. How can these machines move so perfectly on their own? Mike knows something is off. He tells Abby it's time to leave, but first she draws a picture for her new friends. They love pictures. She gives Freddy a hug and they head home, where Mike notices a drawing by Abby of children, one with bunny ears, another with a pirate's hook. He realizes these children are somehow connected to the characters at Freddy's. And the next morning, she explains how. The ghosts of the missing children have possessed the animatronics. Why does the movie lose points here? Well, it's hard to build a sense of horror without some degree of unknown. That's why horror movies, if they provide an explanation, often wait until the end. But in this movie, even before this moment, we already got the idea that there are child ghosts piloting the animatronics. They never get a chance to just be weird and creepy, the way it would be if animatronics moved in an unexpected way. And they're not even creepy kids. They look and act pretty normal, which just isn't scary. Of course, this movie doesn't have to be scary. It could go a different way than the games. But what does it offer in place of that? A mix of clashing tones. It's a goofy slasher at one point. At another, it operates by the rules of a children's movie, like the cartoonishly evil aunt or Abby befriending ghost children like it's no big deal. Even that could work, but by spreading itself so thin over clashing genres, it doesn't commit enough to any one of them to do them justice. Okay, I definitely heard something that time. Let's check it out. Oh, he's gone. Well, that's not good. Mike spots another picture where Abby drew the moment their brother was taken. She knew what to draw because the boy ghost told her about it. Did they tell her anything else about it? No, she answers. All they talk about is a yellow rabbit, but she'll ask them for more info. That night, when they arrive at Freddy's, Vanessa is already there and admits she knew about the ghost children. What's next? Abby informs them her friends want to build a fort. Michael will do it, but first he points out these things are big and could be dangerous, so they have to go over some ground rules first. Vanessa, what do you think? He asks, and she changes the subject. I think we could use the tables for the fort. They build a fort. Abby dances with the robots, then tries to strum Freddy's guitar and gets electrocuted. Well, Vanessa has some egg on her face. Maybe setting some ground rules wouldn't have been such a bad idea after all. Vanessa apologizes to Mike for encouraging Abby to play with the dangerous machines and... Wait a minute. Wait, she's not apologizing? She's threatening him. She tells him this place is dangerous, and if he ever brings Abby here again, she will shoot him. But you're the one who he tried to tell, and then you told her... What? That night, with Max dead and Abby barred from returning to Freddy's, Mike gets desperate and calls Aunt Jane to babysit while he heads to work and then back into Dreamland. There, the ghost boy makes an offer. If he gives them Abby, they will let him dream of a world where his brother is still alive, and he can live in that world every night when he goes to sleep. No way he takes that deal. I mean, he's already proved himself capable of shaping his own dreams. He's managed to train himself so well, he literally has the same dream every night. So if he wanted to, I'm sure he could train himself to dream of better memories. But that's not what this is about. This is about finding the man who took his brother, not living in some fantasy world. He says yes. It's hard to buy that. Maybe if we got to see him live in a pleasant memory for a bit, that could work, but this dream has been nothing but unpleasant. To reach a point of desperation where he's willing to hand his sister to a bunch of ghosts, it's gonna take more than that. Also, why do they need Mike's permission? Can't they just take Abby? They've slaughtered several people already by this point. Did they ask permission before biting Max in half? Mike quickly tries to change his mind, but he's too late. The ghost kids start attacking him before he wakes up, strapped to a chair about to get stuffed into a costume, full of gears and wires. But he manages to free himself. Meanwhile, Freddy pays his home a visit, where he kills Jane and takes Abby. Mike wakes up at a police supply outpost in Vanessa's care. He tells her how he gave them Abby in his dream, and she tells him what they want with her. They want to make Abby like them. What does that mean? Well, the man who took those kids in the 80s knew people would come looking for them, so he stuffed their bodies into the animatronics. It's not just ghosts in the machine, but also their corpses. And soon, Abby will be just like them. But those ghosts don't want to hurt anyone. It's him, the one who took them, somehow influences them to be dangerous. They should hate him for what he did, but they don't remember. And who is he? Who is the man who killed these children, including Mike's own brother? William Afton, Vanessa's own father. As Vanessa explains what's happening, you see Abby arrive at the pizzeria with Freddy. It's a cool shot, and the main theme, 5 Nights at Freddy's by the Newton Brothers, plays over it. It's the same song used in the opening credits, and it's effective. This is probably the only moment where I felt a genuine sense of dread. Plus, it just looks and sounds great. On the other hand, this reveal is emblematic of this movie's biggest problem. A lack of real narrative momentum. What is the movie about? It's not about Mike's attempt to survive killer animatronics. They were only a danger to him in one scene. No, it's about him trying to find his brother's killer. A story like that means we should be curious. The main character should ask questions that we're burning to know the answers to, and answers should come to provide satisfaction, while continuing to pique our curiosity with yet more questions, twists, and turns. There could be multiple suspects and theories as to what happened. Maybe there's a question of whether or not his brother is still alive. Something to make us care how it unfolds. But there's none of that. Just Mike asking the same question again and again, usually in a dream state, and the only clue he gets is a drawing of a rabbit, which, unless you know the lore, means nothing to you, except Garrett's disappearance is probably related to the animals at Freddy's, which we already knew because they have to be related, otherwise, why is it in this movie? I also mentioned earlier how Mike doesn't actually do much to propel the story as a protagonist should, and this rabbit is a great example, because him finding it in the dream is essentially pointless. Even if he didn't find it, he would learn about it from Abby anyway, because she tells him the ghost kids are always talking about a yellow rabbit. And even if she didn't tell him that, it wouldn't matter because now Vanessa, the exposition machine, explains it all. So there's no investigation, there's no slow build-up to a reveal, just treading water with a few mentions of a rabbit, and then movie's almost over, so time to start explaining things. Mike asks Vanessa how to stop the animatronics. How do they save his sister? And she hands him a taser. Electricity will mess with their circuits. Not stopping them permanently, but at least buying them some time. He begs her to come with him, but she's too afraid to face her father. Mike sneaks in through a back entrance, then temporarily disables Bonnie and Freddy with some water and electricity. Then he tases Chica before she can stuff Abby into a costume. They get separated when Mike gets stuck stuck fighting a cupcake while Abby is forced to hide from Foxy. He frees himself and comes for Abby, but instead finds the yellow rabbit, his brother's killer. The rabbit draws a knife, but before he can kill Mike, Vanessa arrives with a gun. He takes off his mask to reveal that the man behind the yellow rabbit, William Afton, is Steve Raglan, the career counselor, the one who got Mike to work here to begin with. He takes a menacing step toward his daughter, so she shoots him, not enough to kill, but enough to show that she means business. "You had one job," he shouts. One. Keep him in the dark and kill him if he got too close. So who was the killer this whole time? Well, we knew it was going to be a male character because they referred to him as him a few times. So that really leaves us with only two suspects, him or him. A truly shocking revelation. Though I do like Matthew Lillard, and it's fun seeing him in this role. Though it would have been nice to see more of him. Also, I have some questions about Afton's grand plan here. He's worried that Mike will get too close to the truth, and it's Vanessa's job to kill him in case that happens. A couple of flaws with that plan. One, Vanessa doesn't seem to share any of his murderous tendencies, so why does he think she would go along with all this? I guess there's a whole other movie happening that we don't see, where she's been loyal to him this whole time and is only now betraying him, but it would have been nice to see some of that. As it stands, we never see that side of her, the side that's loyal to a child killer, or abused and brainwashed into submission by a psychotic father. Two, and this is really the biggest flaw of his plan, he's worried that Mike will get close to the truth, right? Well, in that case, why did you hire him to work as your night guard? He didn't even want the job, you pressured him into it. He would never have known about the ghosts or figured out any of this stuff if you didn't literally stick him in the middle of it all. If you really needed a night guard, was the older brother of one of the kids you killed really the best option you could find? And the answer to that is no, because he didn't even do the job. He just slept the whole time. But you know who is good at guarding Freddy's? Your army of ghost children who already do the job and you don't even have to pay them. The one time anyone tried to break in, they eliminated the threat immediately. And aside from Mike, the other guy you presumably hired before the movie started was killed by them. Stop hiring night guards. The place is very well guarded already. Afton stabs his daughter while Mike has a realization. The drawings. It's just like the lady said at the beginning. Kids are visual learners. He tells Abby to show them what really happened. She quickly draws a picture of the yellow rabbit killing the kids, and now they see the truth. That's unsatisfying and oddly executed. For example, we haven't seen anyone try explaining to these kids what happened to them, and I feel like you would try that before you try drawing a picture, especially in the heat of battle when you could be seconds away from dying. Maybe start drawing the picture, but at the same time shout, "Don't you remember what he did? He's lying to you. Here, I'll show you." In general, it feels like there's a lot missing in this story about the ghost kids. What do they want? What does Afton want with them? Does he influence them through psychological manipulation or something more mystical where it's like they're hypnotized and drawing the picture broke the spell? And why are they so okay with killing people? I get that they don't remember Afton killed them, so they don't hate him. But there's a leap from that to, hey, we should eat people's faces and rip them in half. The possessed animatronics turn on their master and cause his suit to malfunction. Its gears and spokes start to crush and stab into him. "I always come back," he announces before putting his mask back on. The animals descend on him, while Mike and Abby help Vanessa out of the building. In the coming days, Abby thrives at school, and Vanessa lives, though her stab wound leaves her comatose. At Freddy's, Afton groans in pain, still clinging to life, while his past victims turn their back on him. And we've reached the end. The bottom line here is there's some fun to be had in the movie, mainly in the visuals of the animatronics and the pizzeria. But overall, they made an odd choice in adapting the game by deciding not to make it scary. And that's fine, but it never seems to decide what it wants to offer up in its place. Is it about Mike trying to figure out what happened to his brother? Sort of, but we hardly see any investigation, just the same dream over and over until answers are finally given. And the answers aren't satisfying. We don't understand why Afton killed him. And is Garrett different from the other kids? We don't see his ghost, so is he not in any of the animatronics? Why not? Is the movie about Abby feeling alone and finding kinship with ghost children? Well, most of her interactions with them happen off-screen, so it's hard to get invested in that story. Is it about Mike proving himself capable of raising Abby? Well, the aunt fighting for custody subplot is dropped halfway through, and like the people she hired to trash Freddy's, she's just used as fodder for another kill, and not even a fun one, it's completely off-screen. You get the idea. The movie tries a few different things, but only does a little bit of each one, so it's hard to get invested in any one of them. Anyway, here's the final score we landed on. Not the worst movie I've reviewed, not the best. Okay, you hear that too, right? Hey, how's it going?
You couldn't just leave it alone, could you?
What are you talking about?
How could you give such a low score? It's a perfect movie.
I mean, come on, it's not perfect. Nothing's perfect.
It's perfect for the fans. That's who the movie was made for.
But it wasn't scary at all. The games were scary, weren't they? I mean, I only played the first one, but it was...
Shut up! Listen, the opening credits with those 8-bit games, that's like the mini-games in the sequels. On the mirror, it says, "It's me," just like in the game where that phrase flashes on screen sometimes.
Look, Easter eggs and references are cool, but...
They're more than just Easter eggs. They're a celebration of the game series. Do you know how much fun it was to see Matt Pat? He even says, "It's just a theory."
It's just a theory.
Are you being paid?
Did you even notice Circus Baby? Did you?
I don't even know what that is.
Exactly. And how about when Afton says, "Catch you on the flip side"?
So?
Ugh. Are you kidding me? Listen to this.
See you on the flip side.
Yeah, that's cool. It's almost the same line from the game.
See? It's a faithful adaptation. It's fun.
Look, I get it. If you're a big fan of the game, it's probably fun to watch and pick out all the stuff you recognize. But wouldn't it have been better if you had all that fun, but also had a really compelling story?
Wouldn't it even better? Wouldn't it be better if I kicked your ass? Wouldn't it be compelling if I shoved you into an animatronic suit and let all the gears rip you to shreds?
Hey, I think there's been a misunderstanding here. You see, I love the movie. Like, for example, the Dream Theory book that he's reading. That's a reference to how a lot of people theorize that all the games actually take place in a child's dream.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, all these criticisms, the points and everything, that isn't me. That's the ranking algorithm. I'm just the interpreter. But it seems like it's listening to you. You know, machine to machine. You've made some really good points. It really is a perfect movie for the fans. 100%.
100%?
100.000%. Perfect movie.
All right, fine then. Goodbye. For now.
All right, it was nice talking to you.
When the sequel comes out, you better not f*** that up too.
Yep, I won't. All right, that's the end of the video. All right, I think they're gone. Okay, with that, another movie has been entered into the ranking. And I gotta get out of here.